No harm, no foul. Say it with your chest. No harm, no foul. We don't tell it like the rest.
Welcome to the No Harm, No Foul podcast, home of uncompromised analysis and commentary on the NBA and everything surrounding it. I'm Lance Roberson, the founder and host of this lovely show, built for the fans who seek the truth. Thanks for joining us this week. Sorry we couldn't record last week. I was pretty sick, and I honestly thought I was going to miss the signing of the LeBron James news. And thankfully, although I hate that we missed a whole week, a lot of stuff happened behind the scenes. I recorded an episode even though I was kind of sick. The audio didn't work. I found out later that night, and honestly, I just charged to the game at that point. I don't think it was meant to be, but that's okay. We'll come back stronger this week, especially with the LeBron James news, top of the hour. I was getting my hair cut on a Friday morning. Shams let out the report. The owner of the barbershop, his brother was in there, and he was, saying that Shams said that LeBron was going to Philly, and I was like, there's no way. Like, I know that the trusted process line got dropped at that Fanatics Fest out in New York a little over a week ago, but even then, I thought he was just trolling, the New York fans over there. But evidently, it's true. What's even crazier is LeBron signed for a 2-year, $8 million deal, which is the veterans minimum, $4 million a year. Second year has a player option. So if LeBron James wants to continue his career or not essentially, but maybe finish his career in that second year with another team, he has the power to do so. But for now, it's going to be a crazy squad in Philly. So we got LeBron James, Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Hedgecombe, and Joel Embiid. That's a pretty stacked lineup. Will they be healthy? We'll see. At first, when I saw this news, I was like, it doesn't make much sense. I thought this was one of the worst LeBron James decisions since he pushed the Lakers to trade for Russell Westbrook. And then a couple days later, I was like, that might be too harsh of a critique. But frankly, I could still see this Philadelphia team not even finishing top 4 in the East. So you still got the New York Knicks. You got to believe that they can at least, finish top 2, top 3 again. Cleveland, no matter what you want to say about them in the playoffs, they did make the Eastern Conference Finals. They also pretty much brought back almost everybody except for Dean Wade, who coincidentally went to the Philadelphia 76ers, which would have been their starting power forward until LeBron James joined the show. But Cleveland still has a team that could win north of 50 games, possibly 60 games. The Detroit Pistons, yes, they famed out in the playoffs, but Cade's a year older. Asar Thompson, you would think, would get a little bit better at offense. He's still one of the better defensive players in the league, even though he's below 25 years old. And then, whatever happens with their center situation, I still believe the Pistons will be top 3, top 4. And then one of my top teams to look at in the East is going to be the Indiana Pacers. I still think they will cause noise. I don't know if they'll be a top 2, top 3 seed. When they went to the NBA Finals in 2025, they were the 4th seed. So it wouldn't be crazy to see them, finish top 4, top 5 again, especially now that they have a legit center in Ivica Zubac. So that's another way of looking at it. Tyrese Halliburton is back healthy. It's been well over a year since, he tore his Achilles in the NBA Finals in Game 7. And then the Boston Celtics, it's easy to forget about them because they got knocked out by the Philadelphia 76ers. But that was mainly due to Joel Embiid actually being semi-healthy in that series. And we saw what happened when Embiid wasn't healthy the next series against the Knicks. But we'll talk more about Embiid in a little bit. But yeah, the Boston Celtics have a healthy Jason Tatum, and they still have a really solid team in the East. And they have one of the better front offices and a really good coach in Joe Mazzulla, and a great front office in Brad Stevens leading the helm. So I say all that to say, even though the Sixers have LeBron James and they have a pretty young squad, Joel Embiid is still the X factors of this squad, which is weird to say that a former MVP is an X factor. That just shows you how bad his injuries have affected this team and their trajectory in the playoffs. But yeah, it's. I don't think this signing for LeBron is a ring chasing decision because how could you be ring chasing when you go to a team that hasn't made the conference finals since Allen Iverson was playing in the NBA in 2001, right? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But on paper, the team looks nice. It's stacked. It's youthful. The bench is not bad. And typically, I would say, oh, it's the Eastern Conference. It's not that tough. But with all the action in the free agency and trade market in the Eastern Conference, you could argue that they are on the same pillar as the Western Conference, or they might be better from top to bottom. Even though you can still argue, you know, Oklahoma City Thunder, the Spurs are probably better than most of the teams in the Eastern Conference. Still, from top to bottom, it's hard to argue that the East is not a formidable opponent for a Western Conference team nowadays. And as far as this team, a lot has been said about a lot of the usage rate between Jaylen Brown and Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, LeBron James. But you could argue that LeBron James this past year with the Lakers, he took the role of the third option pretty well. And yes, he turned up in the playoffs against the Houston Rockets when Luka Doncic couldn't play. And and Reeves was out for most of the series against the Rockets. And LeBron James at the ripe age of, 42, 43 years old was still able to beat a young Houston Rockets team. But he could definitely be a third option here. Jaylen Brown, though, is going to be the player that I look at the most to see if he can be compatible with all these players. And that's not even to go into what he said about Bronny James in the Summer League a few years ago when he was sitting with some WNBA players talking about that, Bronny's not a real NBA player and whatnot. I mean, I'm sure LeBron James has some reservations about that statement that was caught on camera, but that's besides the point. Just from a strictly basketball stance, Jaylen Brown has to prove that he can play with all these guys. I mean, yes, he finished sixth in MVP. He had a career year with the Celtics, but when push came to shove, he, we've already talked about it in previous episodes. He wet the bed in the playoffs against the 76ers. And also, this is the first time we're going to see Jaylen Brown not surrounded by a supreme system with the Boston Celtics. And again, just by rolling out the ball and having these guys play together, they're definitely going to win 50 games. However, I don't know if they'll win 55, 56, however many games that it may take for them to finish top 2, top 3 in the East this year. This isn't the year, the East of the 2000, late 2000s, where you could be 38 wins and make a playoff bid. I'm not saying this is going to happen with the Sixers, but it's just so much is surrounding them from a health standpoint. And also, like LeBron James at this age, the fact that a lot of Sixers fans are acting like this is the piece for them to win a championship. When again, they haven't even made it out of the second round since 2001. It's just unfair to LeBron James, no matter how great he's been in his career or even how well he played in the first round of the playoffs against a admittedly unproven Houston Rockets team that, even though they've had nice, looks in the regular season, have just fizzled out in the playoffs for 2 years in a row, But in the Eastern Conference, LeBron James is back after spending 8 seasons, which I cannot believe was his highest tenured, stop in the NBA, besides the multiple stops that he had in Cleveland. His era of the Western Conference is now over. He doesn't have to worry about the Oklahoma City Thunders, the Denver Nuggets, the San Antonio Spurs. But still, the aforementioned teams that I talked about, the top of the show, it's still something that the Sixers are just going to have to fight through. I mean, the New York Knicks just mowed through them. And yeah, Embiid was not healthy. LeBron wasn't there. Jaylen Brown wasn't there. But look, when is Joel Embiid healthy? Okay, he's either he starts the playoff series hurt, or he ends the playoff series hurt, or he's just hurt the whole time. And I say that with all due respect, he's playing through these things like cerebral palsy, which is really a freak thing to happen to him, and, just playing through just multiple knee ailments. What are you going to do? But at the end of the day, like, history conveys that Embiid is just not going to be healthy. And, the Sixers are just going to have to not play him back-to-backs in regular season. They're going to have to play him probably 40 to 60 games in the regular season just for him to get through or get to the playoffs and then hopefully survive the gauntlet then. But who's to say he survives it then? And then again, LeBron James, sciatic nerves and things like that he was fighting all season. The Philadelphia 76ers is also going to have to approach LeBron James in a similar fashion to what they're probably going to approach, how they're similar going to approach Embiid. Like, they're just going to have to be like, look, man, I know you want to play. I know you want to be there for the fans, but like this year, we're just going to have to take it slow if we really want to make it out. And it's going to be up to Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Hedgecombe, which honestly, Tyrese Maxey has proven in the past that he can play with almost anybody. I mean, look, he does a lot of nice dribble handoffs with Embiid. You know, he was making it work with James Harden for as much as he could. So Tyrese Maxey is not the player in question. You know, it's going to be really Jaylen Brown just on court and maybe even in the locker room, you know, just by how his intellectual prowess kind of pushes back on certain things. And you know, at this stage, LeBron James is probably going to be okay with that. But at the same time, like I mentioned with what Brown said about his son, Bronny, and who's to say LeBron doesn't want another power move, especially after he signed for the minimum. Philadelphia kind of owes LeBron to trade for Bronny if LeBron James tells him to do so. So yeah, Jaylen Brown, we'll see how he does from a chemistry standpoint and how he shares the ball. But Joel Embiid, man, like if this guy doesn't play at least 45 to 50 games this season, I don't really see the Sixers making a top 4, top 3 bid in the Eastern Conference seedings. And then also, like, if he's not healthy in the playoffs, I don't care if they just got LeBron James and Jaylen Brown. The Sixers are not good enough without a legitimate center to win the Eastern Conference, especially not the NBA Finals, especially if you got someone like Victor Wembanyama on the other side. And you saw what it took for the Knicks to win. They had Karl Anthony Towns have to play one of his best defensive series of his life, if not the best defensive series of his life, you know, for what he did to Wemby in multiple games in the 2026 NBA Finals. You know, Adam Bona is just not going to get the job done in the starting center spot for the 76ers if Embiid goes down for most of the season. So yeah, that's going to be a great time, you know, even though it's not what I would have picked if I was LeBron James. And again, I'm not LeBron James, so I can't really relate. Well, you know, I probably would have selected the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Cleveland Cavaliers, especially if you're going to play for the minimum. But again, at least from an entertainment standpoint, I think it's going to be great for the NBA because despite what you may say about the NBA not having a sure shot dynasty right now, it is pretty interesting that every year a different team won it since 2020. So this is probably another year where that's going to happen. I really don't see the Knicks repeating. I mean, I would if the Spurs and Knicks play it again this year or this coming season, I would pick the Spurs again, and I think they would actually win because they have a lot more experience. But I digress. We're not talking about the Spurs right now. But the Sixers, even with all these moves, I still don't think it's enough to win the championship. And it's probably not even enough to win the conference. But still, it's fun. It's different. I give LeBron credit for even doing something a little bit more out there than just going back to Miami or going back to Cleveland. Although, again, Minnesota Timberwolves would have been great. Seeing him on a better team than the Lakers, potentially. In the West would have been fun. And him and Ant with the defensive lineup of Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. That would have been pretty entertaining television, but here we are. It's okay. You know, he chose who he chose. What are you going to do? But yeah, that's going to be that for there. I just kind of want to quickly go over, you know, their roster right now. So, of course, we got Jaylen Brown, VJ Edgecombe, Justin Edwards, Joel Embiid, Ariel Hukporti, which is a backup center, most likely third string. LeBron James, Kevin Love, Tyrese Maxey, LeBaron Feinlon Jr., which the Sixers just drafted in a late first-round pick in the 2026 draft, which is a nice pickup. They signed Anthony Simons, which will be a great backup guard to provide a shooting burst off the bench. And Dean Wade, as I mentioned earlier, Jabari Walker, Trenton Watford. Now, of course, not all these players are going to make the team, but I think we have an idea who's going to make the team, frankly. And then, yeah, it's just as much as I've talked about in the recent past about LeBron James kind of wearing out his welcome with me, anyways, with how he does free agency and everything else, how he holds everything up. I will say, even if I don't necessarily agree with the signing, this is a fun outcome for everyone. And this is like without even us knowing what's going to happen with the Raptors, if Kawhi's even going to go to the Raptors anymore, since, last episode we talked about the Raptors postponing the trade. But at this point, I could argue that this Philadelphia team is at least better than the Raptors. So top 4, top 5, at least for me, what I'm projecting right now, barring injuries, of course, because, there's nothing we can do about that. But yeah, let's see how LeBron makes it work with these guys. I think he can. I really think, again, it's going to be Jaylen Brown. After him going to this team thinking he was going to be the number 1, number 2 option, how will he fare if he, becomes a third option or just not even the main player anymore or one of the main players of this team? Will Embiid be able to stay healthy? I think Embiid at this point, I don't think there's an ego in terms of like he wants to be the man anymore. I just think he wants to stay on the court and play with these guys. So I don't think ego will come a factor for Embiid. But again, health. Like every time someone says, if Embiid is healthy, I'm just like, come on, dude. Like, what are we talking about here? He's not going to be healthy. Now, what level of unhealthiness is he going to have? Is it cerebral palsy in the first round of the playoffs? Or is it just going to be like a little sprain in the regular season? It's hard to tell. It's almost like you can roll a die in any of these scenarios will occur for Embiid, unfortunately. But again, just for basketball's sake, if he can just stay healthy for 75 to 80% of the regular season, heck, no, you know what? 70 to 75% of the NBA season, I think Philadelphia will finish top 5, maybe top 4. It's going to be hard. It's gonna be tough for all the trainers involved to get enough wrappings for Embiid's knees and whatnot, and making sure LeBron's fight against Father Time is still undefeated. But still, look, man, kudos to the Philadelphia 76ers for making it happen. The Golden State Warriors whiffed again. The Lakers, they could have probably got LeBron James back for the 60 mil. Instead, they didn't. Maybe even LeBron James wasn't interested in the money, even though it's kind of crazy to think someone is wealthy enough to turn down $60 million and take a 2-year minimum deal and still be okay. But here we are, So that's kind of fun to think about, Ron, for all the stuff that we say about him for being a diva or whatever. Like, that dude obviously wants to win. He's selfless because, I've never seen a player of LeBron's stature take a 2-year minimum deal. I've seen players take cuts like Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki, but to take a minimum deal when you're just coming off a $60 million, contract, that's insane to me. But again, that's the will to win. That's the drive to do something different. And LeBron James, for everything that he's done to irritate us in the past, he's also a trendsetter and he does things in his own way. So hats off to him, respect to him for being able to do so. But again, I'm wearing a Lakers jersey, but I'm not a Lakers fan. But it is just crazy to see LeBron go to the 76ers after being with the Lakers for 8 seasons. But here we go. The NBA, always full of surprises. And yeah, so next up, we're going to talk about something that, it's been a little bit since it's happened, but kind of hard not to talk about this. Draymond Green has just been on a warpath of saying and doing things that just put a proverbial foot in his mouth. And this lately, it's just kind of been too much, man. Like, when you're a good player, it's okay kind of for you to be doing these things and saying these things that otherwise sound foolish. But if you can back it up on the court, like, we give you a pass. But recently, which is since this report is kind of since nullified with LeBron going to Philly, but still I think it's worth mentioning. The Warriors 22-year-old rookie Yaxel Lendenberg was attempting to recruit LeBron James to the Warriors because it looks like they desperately needed more than just Draymond Green to recruit LeBron James for potentially his last stop in the NBA. Well, the rookie tried to, recruit LeBron. And Draymond Green, of course, took exception to this on his show. And he essentially, I mean, the way that I look at it, he almost loosely threatened the Axel by saying, that he's going to have to address it, and they'll see each other in uh, training camp. So yeah, Yaxel has a superb summer league performance. He had a little post-game interview recruiting LeBron James. Quote, "I know you don't like rookies that much, but I'm not the average rookie. If you're looking to play with the greatest shooter of all time in Draymond, we'll be glad to have you," unquote. And I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said there. And essentially, you know, just saying that I'm a decent rookie, I'm older, although the reports leading up to the draft say otherwise about his maturity levels, just from an age standpoint, he's mature for your typical rookie. He's not like a 19 to 18-year-old soaking wet behind the ears. But that's neither here nor there. He had a great standing or outing, I'm sorry, in the summer league. So that's not necessarily gonna ring bells to LeBron James, but at least the young man can have some kind of bragging rights to, I guess, put in his own little respective pitch for LeBron James to join Golden State. Now, Draymond Green, of course, as he always does on the Draymond Green Show, he has to talk about everything, including his teammates and coaching staff. I mean, it's kind of getting, it's been annoying, but it's getting just disrespectful and just tone deaf at this point. Draymond Green, you are the feature of This Was No Harm or Foul. Does Draymond Green need to retire from podcasting until he retires from the NBA? So just hear me out. This is what he had to say to Yaxel. Is the peach too weak or too strong? I don't know. I think the pitch is pointless, and, maybe Draymond's right because LeBron chose moving his family all the way to the other side of the United States to Philly. And, the jury is still out to whether his family will live in Philly, but he will be playing in Philly. But I continue. But it's fine. Training camp is coming soon, and I got to rein the rookie in a little bit, teach him a few things. I think you all know why I'm hitting that training camp. And yeah, it's here. It'll get here soon enough. Yaks, enjoy your media. End quote. All right. So if this was anybody else saying this and not Draymond Green, people would have laughed and be like, yeah, rookie just needs to calm down. This is a veteran trying to rein him in. But look, it's Draymond Green. This guy is notorious, kicking people in the chest, yelling at coaching staff in the locker room where the media can hear it outside, accusing his coaches of holding back his career, even though he's won, 4 championships, defensive player of the year. But it's his fault that, it's his coach's fault. That he can't shoot right, or he's not the best at ball handling, or he makes stupid decisions in prime time moments in championship games. But also, yeah, he chokes people out. He punches teammates in the face. Here's looking at you, Jordan Poole. Unfortunately, Draymond Green, just because he's a winner, he gets away with things like that. But you know what? Winners aren't winners no more. The only reason they're relevant is because of Stephen Curry, not because of Draymond, regardless of what Draymond says. You can't punch people in the face and hide your hand anymore, Draymond. And from what I'm reading about Yaxel, I don't think he's necessarily going to take the, turn the other cheek treatment. I don't think Yaxel's just going to bury or get allowed to get buried. This is a Michigan guy here. He's tough. Not to say that there's going to be any violence occurring in the Warriors training camp, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to call these veiled threats when they come from Draymond Green. This guy is just a volatile personality in the locker room and unfortunately on podcasts. I'm used to players being on podcasts, or at least former players being on podcasts, digging up dirt from decades back. But when you're on podcasts, talking about your current teammates and your current coaching staff, that says more about you than it says about the people that you're talking about. Give it a rep, Draymond. You went from a budding star in the media to oh my goodness, this guy's on TNT again, or this guy's on Inside the NBA again. The stuff that you pulled this past postseason when trying to make Charles Barkley the butt of the joke, which he is good at doing himself. He doesn't need your help. But at least he knows how to take a joke. You don't. You try to say, oh, well, as long as I don't end up like Charles Barkley with the Houston Rockets, the same Charles Barkley on the Houston Rockets that was making playoff moments, average higher, points per game and rebounds than you did in your best years. And that's supposed to be the wash Charles Barkley, okay? Like, yeah, Charles Barkley, he's a self-deprecating guy, which is something Draymond can't do, why he's not as great of a star as he thinks he is on the mic. He takes himself too seriously. And frankly, he's just tone deaf most of the time. It's like a millionaire complaining about billionaires being rich. Okay? It just doesn't make any sense. Look, Draymond is one of the best players of all time from a defensive standpoint. But let's not act like his career didn't improve when Steve Kerr came into the picture. And, it's not like this dude was playing with a bunch of bums and he was carrying them. Yes, he was carrying a defense, but also it was a great defensive team. And when you have guys like Stephen Curry, you're able to get away with not being able to be a great shooter for your position or best ball handler or whatever. Yes, you're not a bad passer for your position and for your size. You're a pretty good passer, but it's been years since you've been a real factor on an NBA team, at least for anything that you've done positive on the court. And I'm just me, right? I'm a guy that's former credentialed media that just talks and writes and podcasts. But at least I get my facts straight. I know how to, not take myself too seriously. And again, like I can read the tea leaves. And Draymond Green. Too bad his recruiting pitch wasn't as great as it was for Kevin Durant in 2016. But here we are. I don't want to keep talking about Draymond or just keep going at him. But Draymond, you got to lay off the mic, man. You got to get back in the gym. You didn't get your buddy LeBron James on the Warriors, so now you got to get back with Stephen Curry, the guy that actually won you rings and helped you build a career for us to even care about what you say on the mic, right or wrong, on these podcasts. So again, no harm or foul. Draymond Green needs to hang up the mic until he hangs up his sneakers. I'm going to say no harm. All right, y'all. Well, I know we usually do a couple more segments, but I just want to end it with this. I haven't been feeling well these last couple weeks. There's a lot of sicknesses going on. The Taco Bell disease, even though I ironically haven't eaten Taco Bell in like months. It's just been rough on me. But I mean, heck, players are playing with, hamstring issues and bad ankles or whatever. Kobe played with broken fingers. I'm just a podcaster. So, Scott was telling me you gotta get out there. He was my Mick to my Rocky, if you will. I wish I was that tough as Rocky, but yeah, I just wanted to get back out here. It sucked not being able to release the episode last week. I thought we did a pretty great job, but it's funny. I got y'all in on the inside baseball of it all. Besides the LeBron James set at the beginning of the show, we kind of had the same segments, ready. So that's kind of shows you how there hasn't been that much news since the last episode. Sans the LeBron James signing. So yeah, again, I'm just happy to get back out here and record an episode for y'all. Thank you so much for the views and for the feedback. And I hope to grow the show even further. Again, there's going to be guests leading up to the season. I just wanted to spend this slow time of the NBA calendar to kind of allow for us to get to know each other better and get a little bit more comfortable with y'all. And I'm excited. Truth seekers, I'm always here for y'all. I'm never going to be compromised. This show is all about giving the truth, the real truth, not my truth, the real truth. I know everyone likes to talk about their truths, but there's only one truth, and it's the truth. So until next week, I'm signing off. No harm, no foul. Thank you so much, Scott, for being on the boards, and thank you, listeners and viewers, for making this possible. See y'all next week.
No harm, no foul. Say it with your chest. No harm, no foul. We don't tell it like the rest.